we'll begin. Hey folks, Rob Potter here from the Promise Revealed .net and this little Radio Victor of Light podcast and so forth. And you can see above me here an esteemed guest. I've been watching him for years, and I never really delved too deeply. I've been looking at some of the great videos, and so I'm going to introduce you real quick right here to say Adam, then we're going to go into our normal little pre-show. So folks, Adam Apollo, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's really a pleasure, Rob. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me as a guest.
My pleasure. We're gonna go into. I'm gonna discover some of his history and experiences, and we're gonna open up a whole new window into a very talented, intelligent, and my God, does he have his technology down, folks? He's got the incredible PowerPoints, and they're moving and dynamic. Incredible job, and I think he's really lending a positive influence for people who like to see more science and stuff and get down to the basics. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, but right now I want to take you to my website and give you some updates here. So we're going to go here. I'm going to share this, and we're going to go, I think we're going to go right back to the summer conference that I have coming up here in Mount Shasta. So you can see here, folks, this takes you back to my main page, which we're going to go to in just a moment. But if you don't have money, you want to help out, I have some free tickets available. You click this, it's going to take you there. We're going to take you to the speakers. The schedule's not up yet. Venue location is at the Mount Shasta Community Center. This is where to stay. Every hotel, motel, Airbnb, you got airports, you got everything. Not sure if we're going to have how many vendors we're going to have this year, but this is up here for venues. This is a lot of information. If you have any problems, always contact me here. So we got our 4-day tickets. You can see here the prices are going to be increasing incrementally. Just so you know, I'm going to have 290 tickets with my staff, probably 275. We're already sold out 100 here in mid-December. So I don't know how they're going to last here, folks, but if you want to get them, you want to check it out. You can check out more information as you move along here. So the title this year is Angels and ETs in the Multidimensional Omniverse, suggested my dear friend and mentor and guide and fellow contactee, lived on Venus for 2.5 months, Dr. Raymond Keller. The conference this year is dedicated to you folks. Here are the speakers, and this is what I want to share with you. We have amazing, my friend Omnek, who, oops, this is Untitled Design, big problem. These are going to have to shift. Sorry about that. But she is born on the 5th dimension, which is pretty wild. But the masters wanted to see what a 5th dimensional body would be like. She went with her uncle Odin to the surface of the planet. They said some mantras, and they walked to the city temple of Retz on the surface of Venus, which is kind of a 4th dimensional, 5th dimensional meeting place for various extraterrestrials there. Of course, Raymond Keller, Vivian Chavez, Sasha Stone, myself, Dan Winter's going to be appearing, Ismael Perez, Jane, the wonderful astrologer, and this is another Jane DeForest. She sees and talks to the other side, and she's had some incredible experience. I spoke to Fred Bell on the other side, and she started it off with kick upon your soul. And that was what he wrote in the first book of Angels of Truth for me. He wanted me to get going on my mission. Here it is later. But so she's for real. Of course, everyone knows Brad Olson, Shari Lind, another Pleiadian. The local girl, beautiful Haruko, and then Scott and Vicki Warner. And then Anya Schaefer has been living and working with Omnek for 15 or 18 years in Germany. We may have a couple other people coming on here, but we'll see. So that's the speaker site. And then we're going to go back here to the main site. And I just want to mention, folks, for those of you who have signed up for down here from my inner circle and, of course, the free membership, emails have been going out. I've heard reports that people have not been getting their emails. So please get back in. Again, this is $59 for life. And oh my goodness, do you get a lot of stuff with books and videos and stuff. So you also get a $50 discount to the conference that if you're logged in as an inner circle, you can get that right now. You have to be logged in. So there it is. So check your emails in spam promotions or updates. They're generally coming in the update folder. So the next thing I'm going to do, we're going to lead right here into Mr. Apollo. We're going to go into the Hidden Secrets Cruise. This is one of the banners on my front page, but I've taken this right to the main page here. And this is, I guess it's an older banner, but I'm going to show you. So if you go here, if you do, you have to put a name in. You can put my name in there. You get a 1-hour healing session for free if you register. And this is where you're going to learn more about the cruise and the speakers. It's going to be I've never been on one. I've actually haven't even been on a cruise in my life, so I'm looking forward to it. So you come down here and we're going to click on the speaker, Adam Apollo. I think this is going to take you. Nope. I think we're going to go down here to the speakers and workshops, and I'm going to take you right in, and we're going to read Adam Apollo's Graham Hancock, Jason Shirka, my good friend Sandra Michael. We used to hang out with Fred in the 70s. Both had experiences in his house with the Pleiadians. Laura Eisenhower, my good friend who comes to the Shasta conferences, and here's Adam. So I'm going to read you his history here. He's offered insights into global transitions, physics, technology, human spirituality, the future as the next generation leadership ambassador at the White House and multiple Nexus and other summits of the United Nations and at conference and festivals around the world. He's a co-founder of the Unify movement, which has reached over 100 million people, and 2 education and technology-based companies, Access Granite and Superluminal Systems. He's an active faculty member, author, and lead systems architect for several international online academies, including the Resonance Academy for Unified Physics, the Guardian Alliance Academy for Self-Mastery, with over 100,000 active students of all ages from around the world across these locations. He's been featured on Gaia, Coast to Coast, feature films, and more. Adam Apollo made physical contact with extraterrestrial Star Nation ambassador and began active and ongoing communication with galactic ambassadors from a vast array of different species supporting the Earth. He's dedicated to achieving a sustainable and thriving interplanetary culture. And as you know, folks, this is kind of my hope and dream, is to help facilitate interplanetary cultural exchange. I am a representative of the Venusians, and we're going to get more into Adam's stuff. And I have to tell you, his technology and the way he produces stuff is amazing. And I mean, I'd like to join any online academy that could help me figure out how to make a bold on my Word document. No, I'm pretty much a caveman with 3 thumbs. So, Adam, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we're going to ask some questions. But if you have anything you'd like to say and how you'd like to start, go right ahead. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Rob. I'll just say that I'm happy to be here with you and to be exploring and sharing this conversation with your network. And I'm excited. This is your first time going on a cruise. Cruise ships are pretty fun. And for the audience that might be interested in doing that, I mean, it's a powerful experience just being on a cruise ship. It's kind of like being on an amusement park / summer camp / whatever, but you're going to be there with us hanging out. And, you know, the conference just makes up one part of the cruise. And it's a great opportunity to just like hang out with us by the pool and, you know, sip a pina colada or whatever you like to drink, and just hang out and talk and get to know us. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to get to know each other and for our audiences to come and connect with us as well.
I agree wholeheartedly. One of the things I say in my conference, the conference is about you folks. It's about the speakers, but it's you networking. And on this particular instance, at my conference, speakers come and go. Sometimes I have podcasters come and they're going off to different interviews and all that stuff. So this cruise, you got us. You can know we can walk up and down the aisle and stalk us. No. But some people say, oh, cruise ought to just sit out on the deck. Believe me, I love to sit out on the deck and get sun and read. And I think it's going to be a really fun time. We're going to go to Cabo, Puerto Vallarta, and Mazatlan. At Mazatlan, we're going to go see some of the ancient hieroglyphic sites there, if you want, and lots of wonderful things. So let's get into Mr. Apollo, Mr. Adam Apollo, and I'd like to take us back to your first spiritual awakening. I had some stuff when I was very young at 8 was my first contact. I didn't really make sense till 16 or 17. And share your experiences and how you got into this and through the contact experience that led up to the physical contact.
Yeah, thank you. I think like a lot of people, just going through life, being young and the nature of our society and culture, I think I lost a lot of my innate abilities over the years. My mom said that, when I was little, she used to just look down at me and notice that my hair was getting kind of shaggy and think, I need to get a haircut, and I would look up at her and I'd point in my head and be like, haircut? And so she knew I had these abilities since I was little. When I was around 7 or so, she was working at a horse ranch in Red River, New Mexico, just outside of town. And Red River, New Mexico is a beautiful, beautiful place at 9,000 feet elevation. I used to kind of laugh that you had to look for the dark places in the sky because so many stars and so dry and clear and brilliant. I love high deserts as a place to make contact, by the way. And one night I was walking around this little lake at the horse ranch and a light came over the mountain and it shined at me super, super bright. And then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, it's shooting back over the mountain and disappears. And I went and told my mom about it. And a few days later, I had to even ask my mom, hey, did that happen? Because it was so strange and it felt like a dream and it felt like different than anything I'd ever experienced. And so I wasn't even sure it really happened. I had to actually confirm with her that I had seen this thing. As a teenager, I was driving home with my dad and my stepbrothers on this dirt road through Missouri. And my stepbrother says, stop the car, stop the car. We jump out of the car. There's no lights, street lights around because we're on this back dirt road towards our house. And there's a triangular like shaped ship weaving across the sky. And we're all just like, oh my God, what is that? And then of course it flies off the horizon. So I had these moments that inspired me to ask hard questions. I met Stephen Greer in 2001 after his National Press Club conference in Asheville, North Carolina, along with many, many different UFO researchers and scientists and people into disclosure. And that was really like laying out this picture that essentially we're not alone and that there was data about that. But my personal awakening experience happened when I was 15. And I essentially had a friend and I was, with him philosophizing about the nature of life and reality. And we were asking some pretty hard questions like, how is it possible you could feel it when somebody's looking at you from across the room? Like there's got to be a physics to that, right? Or how do your ears burn when somebody's talking about you? Or how could you think of someone and then they call you on the phone? And in those days, it was the 90s, it's landlines, right? So we didn't even have cell phones. So there's some powerful mechanisms to these things. And that led me to an experiment where essentially I just slowly separated my fingertips. And for the first time in my life, I saw streams of energy moving between my fingertips. And I could feel the tingle, the density. And I just went off into experimentation with my friend where we would blindfold each other and locate objects in the room, what I came to understand is like human dowsing, essentially, but using the tingle of energy and the intention of the object. I used to do blindfolded martial arts. I began through my connection with energy and understanding how it moves and flows. I began to unlock what I have come to think of as my astral Akashic library that I set away for myself for, lifetime after lifetime. And I just needed to have this direct, visceral, physical experience of consciousness outside of my body, of the force being real, of psychic abilities being real, and a lot of these keys being real. And suddenly I began downloading this massive work that I had already been generating for lifetimes that I call a unified harmonic matrix. It's essentially a way of studying consciousness and its interface with space-time.
I'm excited to get into that. I have a couple questions here. So
Sure.
At 7 years old is when you saw your mom and you started sensing things.
Yeah.
And
No,
So,
that was younger when my mom used to say that, I knew when she wanted to give me a haircut and things like that. That's when I was
oh,
very,
yeah. Um, um, I wanted to, so yeah, I wanted to ask about may I ask how old you are?
sure, I'm 40.
40. So 2001, that was, yeah, you were like 18 at disclosure, right? Wow.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like I'd had these awakening experiences in high school. I just started college in Asheville, North Carolina, and I run into a guy who'd just come from DC, and he had a black tape from the National Press Club conference in DC, and he's like, "You got to have this, and Greer's coming, and you got to meet him." And so, sure enough, I met Greer in those days. That was still 4 years before my own personal first contact experience.
Oh, okay. That leaves another question here. And and so one of the things, so you're very young. So this is really amazing that you have this experience. Stephen Greer called actually me at the office and asked if Fred gave all of his bona fides,
Mm.
and he decided he didn't want Fred to come because Fred was claiming physical contact at that point. He just wanted to do the thing. I always was
Yeah,
kind
he's
of
trying to work with government acceptance, which is a hard game to play.
right now. Here's the thing that because I know Andrew Basaggio well. He
Mm,
spoke at my conference, and
mhm,
I'm not gonna. I don't mean this as dispersion in any way, shape, or form, but when he was in the program with Barack Obama and Stilling and Rodriguez in he was kind of involved. His father was in the Project Looking Glass. Are you familiar with Andrew?
a little bit, yeah. I mean, I
He
know his name and I've seen some of his work over the
he
years.
traveled. He traveled in back in time through the government, some of the technology, and his
Mm,
father got him out because they were starting to do electroshock and mind control. But he
mm,
was there with Barry Soetoro, dressed as a Muslim in his room there before he came to the
mm,
meeting, and they went by a group, and there was Stephen Greer, and he
mm,
goes, "Oh, are you guys with the DoD?" Because it was a
mm.
space program, because Mount Shasta is a major portal. And
Sure.
actually, from where I'm standing in the video here, folks, if you look over this way, and there's a town called McLeod where Military Pass Road, they have a huge underground center there. That
Yeah.
technology has been taken out. But so I was questioning,
Mhm,
because he is a former MK Ultra
mm,
person on that,
mm,
how closely he is. But I think what he's done is a good job.
mm.
Did you were you aware of any of that? Or I mean, I think he's doing a good job. I was kind of surprised he wants to charge $10,000 to see a UFO.
Yeah. I mean, that's tends to be a little bit of a loop that I see a lot of people getting caught in,
Yep.
is like, I need to make money. This is what I'm good at. And people believe my thing and I can call in a ship. So come, whatever. I mean, I've only ever just generally gone for free to hang out with people on mountaintops and called in ships that way. But
Right.
I have also, in doing Jedi training workshops where I'm teaching people energetics, martial arts, energy circulation in the body, and tantric techniques, as well as Taoist alchemy techniques,
Mhm.
or sword work, feng shui, life energetics, essentially.
Right.
Also brought those groups out to experience direct connection, communicate with a ship, and that
Of
kind of
course.
thing. But yeah, to speak to Stephen, he's a complex character. I was 18 when I met him, and
It's okay. I just want
what
to.
I
I just
really saw was what you're saying. Like, he did an amazing job bringing together a lot of
incredible.
people who were scared to death to tell the truth, at like 400 plus CIA, NSA, FBI pilots, astronauts, head counsel of the Iran Contra hearings, and he got them to start speaking out publicly. And that was huge, because it's created some groundwork that I believe a lot of us have been able to build on over the years since then.
I concur exactly. The other thing I wanted to talk about, you move forward. You said you've made this development in your energetic body and your personal development and your spiritual uh sheath and understanding, and of course you've had a lot of information now that you've restored some of your past life memories and things like this, and you're moving
Many of them.
forward with your mission. um I'm doing the same thing. I think a lot of people are. I want to hear about, when was your what led up to your first contact? You saw some lights when you were a kid. This is quite common for us. Uh,
Yeah.
well, how did that go? And
Yeah. So basically in 2004, I ended up at a grocery store in Asheville, North Carolina, and I ran into a guy who recognized me because he knew my grandparents. And he said, "Hey, you're Adam Apollo, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm going up to cook for a bunch of these indigenous elders up in the mountains in Boone in a few weeks. Would you like to join me?" And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not really a chef. I love cooking and I could probably help. That sounds really interesting, but like, why are you inviting me? He's like, I don't know. I just have a feeling like you're meant to be there. And
was your,
sure
is
enough,
your is your given name Adam Apollo?
it is me on my mom.
Wow, awesome. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Apollo is my middle name. And so essentially, I go up to this mountaintop and there's Mayan daykeeper and, Puhanua Kanahele, also known as Bumpy from the Hawaiian tribe. And there's Orville Looking Horse and his family from the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota Sioux, and all these Great Lakes tribes. There's 120 something tribal leaders from around the world on this mountaintop. And I'm like, pretty much the only white kid there the first day. I end up calling a couple other friends who come up to experience this with me up there. And I'm essentially, introduce myself as I'm here to represent the tribes of the people who are not represented and the youth. And so I became the youth representative
There you
of
go.
all the essentially European tribes and other tribes that weren't there and weren't being acknowledged. And so they wanted me in every ceremony. They wanted me in every fire. They wanted me sweating with them and smoking the white buffalo peace pipe and doing all of this, this sacred work. And I, essentially was supposed to be cooking for them the whole time, and so the chef is like, what are these? He's off doing all the things and I need him in the kitchen. So it was a challenge, but
He was
then
just a messenger. He was there to bring you to that.
he was meant to bring me
Yeah.
to this community. And what happened was Orville Looking Horse's son had been in a car accident. And he and his wife, Paula, asked me to help his daughter, Gracie, organize this prayer run for world peace with these youth from the north, from the west coast, from east coast, and down in Mexico to run with eagle staffs together and converge around the summer solstice in the Black Hills of South Dakota. So I end up getting spun into this and I'm helping Gracie with the East Coast run and running much of the way to South Dakota.
Actually running with
Actually
staff.
running, a
Wow.
mile at a time and then passing the staff to someone else like a relay, and they run for a mile. And we covered it like 100 miles a day many times. And it was a
Wow.
crazy adventure. We had a van blow up, catch on fire and blow up. We had a bunch of the kids lose their stuff. But in the end, we came together for this World Peace Prayer Day ceremony. And I feel like, this process and being with these indigenous kids and elders and running with them, it was extraordinarily powerful in grounding me.
Mhm.
And I got more grounded than I've ever been. I was more in my body, more interconnected to who I am than I've ever been. And that ended up getting me to the West Coast. I find out about this event that happens in the middle of the desert called Burning Man up in the deserts of northern Nevada. I go back across to the East Coast to Asheville. Somebody literally hands me a ticket and says, you should go to Burning Man. I end up there. And over the week, I end up having lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of integration experience leading up to the burn night. And then on the night of the burn, I entered an experience that was, I would say, different than anything I've ever gone through in my life. I met my mother and father from the age of Atlantis. I went through a powerful healing experience with them. And let me say, if you've never met your parents from a past life, the visceral nature of the emotional experience of that is quite powerful. And
were they a couple again?
What'd you say?
Were they a couple again or individuals?
No, they had just encountered each other out there in the desert, just synchronistically. And
how did you determine that? Was that an inner knowing experience?
Yeah, well, it was literally after the man burn, I went back to camp and this guy, William, essentially comes walking into the camp And as he's walking towards me, he's coming out of the dark. All of a sudden I see him, and he's got kind of semi-pointed ears, and he's got these robes on, and he's walking out of a forest, and I can feel him, and he's my father. And I'm like, I feel all this love,
Wow.
and he feels me as his son. And suddenly it was like the memory was clear as day. And if you, those of you that have had strong, what I call like simultaneous recall experiences,
Mhm.
when they happen, the truth is visceral. It's unquestionable. Every part of your system knows, and they know, and it's simultaneous, and it's just true. It just is. And the challenge for most people is that they'll have those kinds of experiences and not actually talk about them, right? They won't actually bring up, I'm experiencing you as my, lover from this time, or my mother, or my sister, or my daughter, or my father, and I, over the years, since, before that, since I was 18, had already been practicing learning how to accept and learning how to process these kinds of flashbacks, because I'd already had many, many of them by that time.
And
So,
I want to have another question there, go back to the Indians. Who was the
sure.
Mayan gatekeeper there?
Yeah. So
You
the
remember the
Mayan
name?
gatekeeper's name, yeah. Hang on. Tata Apollinario.
Interesting.
He's a
Apollinario.
Apollinario. Yeah, he was a old man at that time, and he was being supported by Tata Eric Gomez, who
Mhm.
is a translator for the Maya, and also still, I believe, teaches Mayan time science.
Mhm.
That was amazing, because I'd found out about the dream spell only earlier that year, and I'd started actually teaching about Mayan time science. And then here I am with this Mayan elder. No, actually, it was a couple years before I learned about the dream spell. And then here I am with this Mayan elder. And I wanted to know, what's the difference between the dream spell and the long count? And he was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't matter when you start or when you stop. As long as you count the sacred count, as long as you count the sacred numbers, consciousness follows the pattern. And it was just like, oh my God, of course. It's all
Yeah.
just about sacred cycles and patterns. There's no right or wrong calendar. So anyway, that's a side story.
The Mayan calendar is based on the cycles of Venus, and actually Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl, Tacoma,
Mm,
um, and that was actually Christ who actually came, and he said he came
mm,
to India, came there. I saw the statue
mm,
of Quetzalcoatl with a beard. They had a baptism pool at Tulum, and
mm.
the guy was telling me, yeah, these are the. He says this guy came, and they show him upside down in the hieroglyphs, meaning he came
Yeah,
from the stars. So
yeah.
he said he was a shepherd. He came to see other people in his flock. The guy
Mm,
showed me this,
yeah.
my guy that was just down there, and he said, he says, "Bring me your sick, I will heal them." And you got to stop killing people and animals. He was
Yeah.
overcoming the fall that had taken place in Maya land. Maya land originally was
Mm,
started by Queen Maya, who was the daughter of Atlan at towards the end of the destruction. And
mm,
there was actually a land bridge they could actually get there walking, but they saw that as uh, a place to reestablish the high mystery schools and that type of thing there. And the
right.
Mayans were very, very different. So actually, I'm doing a tour down there next year. If you're
Nice.
interested, we're going to go around the 17th of November with Louis Martens. I'm organizing. I went down on a 10-day research, and I'm firming up the locations and all that stuff. And they have
Mm,
incredible C notes and stuff. Vivian Chavez is coming, and if you're interested, you might want to come and bring some people, and we could do something like that. No answer now. I'm just going to mention it. But so
nice.
this was an incredible experience with these ancient elders, and I'm very connected. I was at the Rainbow Gathering, which is kind of the precursor to Burning Man,
Yeah,
more
I've
like an
been there many
organic
times.
hippie thing.
Mm,
And grandfather David came in 1978,
mm,
79 in Arizona, and he came in the center circle, and he goes, he blew the horn. He goes, And he goes, how do you people get together? What is your story? And we're just getting ready for dinner. We said, well, we blow the horn, and all the kitchens bring all their food that they've gathered together, and we create a meal, and we have a big circle. He
Yeah.
asked us some other questions, and he goes, what do you call yourselves? The Rainbow People. And he was like this, and he says, you are the Hopi prophecy of the Rainbow People, which is really
Yeah.
everyone in the world. It's not the cultures. It's the same prophecy over and over again, given
Mhm.
throughout history and culture.
It's the
So
weaving
now that
of the
we've
sacred hoop, reweaving the threads of the sacred hoop, or as the Maya would say, reconnecting the four corn people from the four directions of the river in the sky, which sounds to me like they're referring to the four directions of the galaxy and the different star nations that came here and that, are part of humanity and have been for a very long time now.
I agree with you completely. Now I'm excited. I want to go into your experience, how your contacts took place. So you've had this Burning Man, you're incredibly sensitive, you're guided, you're getting these messages, opening up downloads. And I like how and I can flow into physics and stuff. I don't have the math, but I can go metaphysical hierarchy, and I can go into what I believe is a template for the global restoration plan, and how people can start to look to integrate an entire new way of thinking, because we cannot hold on to any of this system. My feeling, people, is that you have to stop your attention on money. You have to understand that we are going to be communal, not communist, but communal. We're going to be a socialist state in a way that we're going to take care of everyone. And once we fix the financial process here, abundance and prosperity will flow. The Venusians have indicated very clearly that the greedy financiers, the bellicose militarists, the negative forces have had control. We need to become sovereign and just step away. We don't have to fight them anymore. Now is the time for us to just develop, follow leaders like Apollo, take these new tools, these new ideas, and create new systems.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. Well,
I think
you keep introducing amazing sidetracks, and I want to speak to that one for a moment, and then we can get back to my story, and just say that, I think the bridge for a lot of people logically is once you understand that at a certain level of technological development, you develop the ability to replicate objects. And so what that means is you can essentially generate specific minerals, materials, or objects. And once you're able to generate gold, let's say from nothing, essentially from the quantum plenum, what we call the vacuum, then essentially what value does gold have? It doesn't. It exists as just an object that you can use. And the same becomes true of money. And the reality is that we are naturally moving towards an information economy. We're moving towards a world in which our art, our gifts, the gift of who we are, the magic that we have, the information we have, that actually becomes the thing of greatest value. Because when you have this ability to replicate minerals or objects or materials, it's no longer a resource-based economy anymore. And so we're definitely going there as a planetary species. And there are specific technological transitions that can get us there. And I do talk about those in a lot of my different talks, essentially helping people to understand how we get to that world, and that it is absolutely coming. There's no doubt about it. We're already building gems one molecule at a time, and we can already create pretty semi simulacrums of gold, that kind of thing. And so, it's our art, it's our ideas, it's our minds, and it's our consciousness that actually hold value. And I believe, based on my technological work, that the new forms of exchange are actually about trust. It's actually how we exchange trust with each other that becomes one of the most powerful currencies, that is a lasting currency and is used across the galaxy as well as the universe.
That's beautiful. I think one of the things you're talking about is this transition and the value of things. But I think what's going to take place, because the value of the unity that you talk about, or what I call the law of allegiance, that we're all part of the one whole, when we realize this holographic nature of the fractal universe, that we're all part and parcel, and within us is the infinite God. The infinite God within us individually, we could call the Christ consciousness, but everyone is part and parcel. People who are atheists, where is God? I say, where is God not? God is within everything. And
Exactly.
people want to associate a religion or a teacher or a name or a form. God is transcendent to all forms, yet exists within them. So the
Amen.
transformation that's going to really change the planet is not new laws, not a new financial system, but an acknowledgement and a growing as these vibrational attunements come forward, as laid out in the Lion's Path of the Sirius book that talks about the actual genetic mutation of humanity, which is in process now. And it's been ongoing for hundreds of thousands of years. So mankind is evolving to a position now where we're going to be responsible. How does this transition take place, Adam? And I want your thoughts on this. My feeling is that when everyone recognizes this, it's not a law that's incurred, it's a feeling within themselves that they will refuse to take part in activities and systems, whether it be for money or anything else. We call it the event based on an intended time of a great transition, a removal of the dark force, which is a slow step by step.
Yeah.
But according to my teachings or my understanding of this event, based on from the Venusians and the Pleiadians and the what are called the solar flares, there's going to be one major flash that's going to take it to the fifth dimension for a moment. And this will allow the removal of a parasitic entity that's been invading and corrupting a lot of people, literally individuals. I've seen images of beings stepping out of bodies that are kind of fake humans kind of thing. Don Juan and Carlos Castaneda talked about this too. So I think that this vibrational shift is going to liberate a lot of people, and everyone's going to have a more developed intuition, coming to the level that you're at. You're at a very high level of intuition and synchronicity and moving kind of like in the Celestine prophecy. I mean, we all have moments of that, but I feel you've been very guided from an early age. And this is one of the things when I listened to you speak, I was very impressed that not only the way of your presentation, but your technology and delivering it, but the way that you broad range and are able to help us understand, all these things can be given to us when we reach that level. The Queen said we're preparing for places for you on the front side of the moon and Mars, and you're going to be transitioning in the fourth dimension of time, which will extend your lifespans and allow you to you have to use time responsibly. The Venusians can do bilocation signals, look into the past and future. They can go into the future of parallel Earths, but they can't go into other ones and change the future. But so with these transitions coming up,
it's all
vibrational
potential.
feeling, I want to hear what you have to say, how you see mankind making this shift. And then we're going to get into your UFO thing.
Yeah, well, I've had the moments of sort of the dark nights of the soul where I had to face the deep need to cleanse and to clear myself and restore my being and my soul to its true form and true nature. And I had one of those experiences, I guess it was not long, maybe 6 months to a year or something after my contact experience. That's, the back mainstream of our story together. And in this experience, I had just essentially had a sequence of dreams, remembering a past life on another planet in extraordinary detail. Every single moment of the experiences that I had came back to me. And I end up sitting with a brother around a fire, and he was there. And we shared deeply about this time and these experiences that we had that were quite intense. They were in the Orion Wars, battling against reptilians and escaping from essentially a slave compound on a lava moon. And I won't get into that story because it's a long one and in depth, but I ended up sitting by the fire, and I had just the immense feeling of the contracts that I had allowed to bind me. And I pull out my wallet, I pull out this Bluetooth thing that I have on, and I'm sitting by the fire, and I'm just like, insurance card. I don't need any other being to ever tell me that I am insured. I am insured by my own divine right. Into the fire. I pull out my credit cards. I don't need anyone else to tell me that I am credible, and I throw it into the fire. I took IDs, I took money, I took all these things, and I've purged. And I had to do that as a reset to get back to I am the divine sovereign keeper of my own destiny and my own life. And from that moment, when you make those kinds of clearings and commitments and realignments, I also have done it over the years with theta healing, and I had massive past life healings and learned how to clear contracts for others using the technique of theta healing. And essentially, you then are much, much more clear to provide your service to the world and your transformation to the world. And now, all these years later, 15 years later or so, I have credit cards, I have accounts, I have insurance, I have all the things, but they have zero control over me or my life. I recognize them simply as tools for interfacing with regulatory systems that I'm choosing to interface with in a limited way as I am building transitional technologies, social components, philosophical methods. I have a trust web. I support people in understanding trusts and PMAs, and how to essentially liberate ourselves from these systems while still interfacing with them enough to survive and to deal with daily life in this age.
That's beautiful. What's a PMA?
A private member association.
Okay.
It functions essentially as a private organization, the same way a private expressible trust does. And it's a little different from a 501c3 or a 508c1, which a 508c1 is like a church organization. A PMA, a 508c1 is still filed with the government. So you're asking a governing body for permission to have this church or this vehicle. Private member association is a signed and contracted document made as a private contract between people, which is essentially protected by the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that private contract has no ability to be drawn into statutory jurisdiction, meaning it cannot be sued in court. It cannot be taken away from you. It exists as a part of your liberty as a sovereign individual.
That's great. And I think I've always felt that. I mean, so many people are the followers, and I don't know, I'm quadruple Aries with a bad moon rising. No, but I don't follow anyone. I'm always like, nah. And some people think it can be negative, but I had people go, what about that? Or they're like, man, getting like, go get your back, whatever whatever they're doing. And I'm just like, are you nuts? The mark of the beast, or whatever my comeback is. I'm brutally blunt, but I really
like, how do you trust these companies after they've been sued 20,000 times and had to pay out tens of millions to
it's good business
dollars on every
it's good business. It's $100 million to develop. You pay off another 100 million to get it up there, and then it's going to hurt people, but you're going to make 5 billion. Sure, you give away $1 billion. That's 4 billion in profit. So it's just an unbelievable thing. People need to realize that there is so much greed, corruption, and all this is going to end as we become more in tune through programs like Apollos and the information. And I do love the ET stuff. Maybe we can have another interview in the future. I hope maybe next year, but I would love to now. Let's get into your actual how the ET experience. You've had these mystical guidance with these teachers and these personal transformations and downloads and experiences. When did the Space Family formally acknowledge you? Were you contacted telepathically? Lead us into that period of your life.
Yeah, and just acknowledging, that we have limited time as well, Rob. I will also just say, for the listeners who want to know more about that story in its fullest depth, it is on Gaia TV. And the interviews with Ed, interviews with Extra Dimensionals shows from Ruben Langdon. I have 2 episodes on there. If you just search Adam Apollo, where I tell the story over, literally the full high context version, which was originally like a 6-hour long interview. And he cut it down into 2 episodes. But it's got all the juicy stuff that I can't tell you all the details and context of right now. But I will say I was at Burning Man. I met my mother and father from the Age of Atlantis. I end up going out into the middle of the desert by myself. And as I'm going out into the middle of the desert, I began feeling a woman who had been my partner back in Asheville, North Carolina. And I feel her astrally with me. And she is essentially dreaming that she's in the desert with me. I end up having these conversations with her afterwards. And we go to this art piece, which looks like a rainbow coming out of the middle of the ground. And there's a triangle, and I go and put my head into this triangle just intuitively. I just know that's what I'm supposed to do. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting on this beautiful tiled floor in this giant observatory with dark panels across the roof with different constellations visible in the ceiling. And I know it's brilliantly bright outside. And I'd been to this place in a dream when I was 15, but I'm there sitting across from her. And we are weaving our energies together in a spectral field. Each chakra, each color of our energy body, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple to white, we're weaving together and we're preparing this bond, this soul contract, because she's my sister. And we are going to literally leave our bodies and die and travel to Earth, to Gaia, and be born into a hybridized group, essentially of half Syrian, half humans that are in a particular area on this planet. And we made this choice to make this soul transition, to go there, to be born as half humans and start our journey on Earth. And this was around the time of the height of Atlantis, just before the massive shift to the Lesser Dryas and the end of the Ice Age and the floods. In the height of that civilization is when I came here. And it was clear as day that we had done this and we'd made this contract together. And so to keep the story short, basically we unbind this contract. We exchange a ton of knowledge and experiences and information from our lifetime since we made that bond, because she had incarnated as a woman and me as a man in each of those lives, as family members sometimes, as lovers sometimes, as friends, or, sometimes people that had a really hard time finding each other. But every time we found each other, we stimulated memory of our lifetimes all the way back to eventually why we came here. And there I was back at the beginning of why I came here. And I suddenly had this very, very clear revelation that I came here with many other beings from other star systems, and that we joined into this extraordinary renaissance during the height of Atlantis. And I decided right there and then that now I want to go and actually call down star beings. I want to actually reconnect with my star family, because for the first time in my life, they weren't aliens or extraterrestrials. They were my family.
Right. So I want to go back. So you were out in Burning Man when where the triangle. Okay. And so
Middle of the
you had this
desert.
astral experience kind of, or you were transported to
Yeah.
the ethereal
It was a
location.
flashback.
A flashback.
That
Okay.
was like a deep, full flashback.
And she was having it simultaneously in the astral.
And she was having it simultaneously, sleeping in her bed in Asheville, North Carolina.
Wow. Okay. And so so you were having all these experiences with her. You kind of unraveled all those lifetimes, and you came here in Atlantis time, what, like 12, 15,000 years ago or longer?
13,000 around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow,
We
okay.
estimate the floods happened around 12,800 years ago. That's
Mhm.
rough. But I remember the tidal waves hitting the city that I was in.
Mhm.
And I was in a city on a peninsula. I'm really, at this point, very, very confident that it was in the Mediterranean area, probably in Greece area. It
Mhm.
was one of many, many cities that exchanged knowledge and information throughout the planet at that time.
Yep.
And I remember literally one of my first past life flashbacks was hanging out with two of my friends in college. I was still in high school at 17. And we were in a dorm room essentially talking about manifestation and how you connect the physical, emotional, and mental fields. And when the mind, the emotions, and the physical world are in coherence, boom, stuff
Yeah.
creates. And all of a sudden we flashed back and we were in this giant crystal pillared temple, and we were storing this information by speaking and chanting and singing truth into these crystal pillars that we were routing down into the planet to store that information, because we knew this cataclysm was coming. We knew the waves were coming.
Wow, that's great. So I know we have limited time, but so now you've felt the need to contact. I just wanted to ask
Yeah.
the clarity because
Sure.
that's what I thought you had meant. So I just wanted to clear that maybe for the audience as well. So
Thank you.
now you go out into the high desert. Believe me, high desert.
Yep.
They got a high desert up here in Mount Shasta, Yucca Valley, the contacts, and in Bolivia and in Tibet. These are, and where George Adamski had contacts out in the high desert there related to the Venusians. And
Yeah.
so the high desert is definitely, they like that. There's not a lot of mental activity around the society to interfering with different things. So you go out to the high desert. Is this where you had your first contact?
I go out into the middle of the desert, and Burning Man is there, but this was 2005. So at that time, there's a lot less people, and the city is massive. In the distance, it's like across my whole horizon is the city of Burning Man. But I'm out in the middle of the open playa, and I see this beacon of light shooting into the stars, and so I just go towards that. I'm feeling it.
There you
And I
go.
end up at this art piece that's essentially this conic structure. What looks like stars rotating around it, done with these laser towers and a beam of light shooting out the top. And I go inside this thing. And to make a very long story short, I realized that the internal art structure of this was a map of our galaxy. And one side of it was showing how Earth is completely disconnected from the communication in the rest of the galaxy.
We're way on the edge. We're way on the edge.
Yeah, well, it's our belief about time, Robert. And that's, when you get into talking about 4D and 5D, like, I don't look at these as shifts out of 3D. They're integrations of levels of awareness. And when you realize that synchronicity exists, you start realizing that there's perfect patterns hidden inside of the encryption that is time, or as my friend Robert Grant would say, like, the only things the patterns we don't understand are encryptions that essentially we haven't learned how to crack yet. Anything that's random is just a higher level encryption. And so here I was decoding why, and the idea is that humans perceive time as linear. But when we only think that we can communicate by sending a light beam or a radio wave, it's going to take 400 years to get to the Pleiades because they're 400 light years away. Whereas the galactic community has realized there's a simultaneity and a circulation to time and to consciousness such that we can instantaneously be in communication with any place in the universe at any time, at any moment. That's the capacity of consciousness.
Thought is immediate and everything's part of each other. So you're really, it's beyond your time and space. So
exactly.
You're out there.
I'll get right into it now. I'm going to land it here for you.
They're going to land.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, I have these realizations. I won't get into all the details of how I did this reconnecting process, but essentially I reconnected the field. And the moment I reconnected it, I'm sitting there, and there's a few people in this space, and all of a sudden I look up and there's a being. She's standing in the middle of this space, and she's staring at me, and she's about 10, 12 feet away, something like that. And
I'm physical.
This physical. And I'm like, she's looking at me just with these piercing eyes. And immediately I just stand up and I go to walk over to her because I had sat next to this person while I was contemplating something. And so I go up to her. As soon as I get within about 4 feet of her, I feel her energy field and my energy field meet. And then now at this moment, I'm realizing details I hadn't noticed before. Like, she didn't have this bone point, which every Homo erectus, every Homo sapien has. It did not exist right there. It was back here, and it was hollow all the way back to here, like under her eye. She had these bone points here and here and here and on her chin. She was wearing these robes that essentially framed her long hair, and down the front of the cowl and along the front of the robes, there were these little glowing patterns that looked like constellations going all the way down the front. And she's just staring at me, and I get into
She
contact with
she wouldn't
energy.
be noticed by anyone else. She's a Burning Man, so perfect.
And well, it gets better. So I get to this energy field crossing with her, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm in a telepathic field with her. And suddenly it's like someone dropped me into a VR, AR, augmented reality headset or something. I could just suddenly feel her completely and me completely. And she just sends into my mind, I know who you are. And it was like, boom, I'm docking a starship with this massive ship. Boom, I'm walking with her and looking down at a planet with these windows. Boom, I'm in this like massive, council chamber, and there's all of these beings. It looks like the space out of Star Wars. Boom, I'm standing in a stone circle and I'm raising a sword, and there's a ship and it's shining a light down on me. Boom, 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 boom. Just like all of these moments, and this symbol that I keep seeing of 567, which I started drawing when I was 15, and started because I was like always drawing the pentagram, hexagram, heptagram. It's like, this is part of my soul codex of what I'm here to bring. And so she knew me completely and just gave me these flashbacks instantly. And I was just like, holy crap. Like, and I was like, thank you. And there's these two guys that come up, and essentially one of them's literally wearing like a steel chainsaw hat. And these guys are kind of what I would frame roughly as drunk, tripping rednecks, right? And so, and I mean that with the greatest love and compassion, because I spent a lot of time growing up in Western North Carolina, and I grew up with a lot of rednecks and drank a lot of beer with rednecks and hung out with a lot of rednecks. So anyway, these guys walk up and they're looking at this art, and they look at her and they're just like, whoa, man, what the heck is going on in here, dude? And they're like checking out stuff. So they are seeing her. And I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, somebody else is seeing this woman. Like, this is really good, because it's helping my logical mind go, okay, you're having an experience with another being from another world
Did
right
it
now.
kill the experience, or?
No, it was just like, it just grounded me more. And she glanced over at them, and she glanced back at me, and she says into my mind, not all of you are ready. And it was like a flood of imagery that was similar to, if you ever saw the movie The Fifth Element, when she looks up the word war, it was like
Yeah,
that.
I know.
It
Montage
was like
where
that dude, and he shaves his head and he's shooting his shotgun and he's beating people up. And then he joins the military because his dad beats him. And then he's in the military, and now he's listening to heavy metal while he's
I
shooting.
hear you. I hear you. I get that. So, and most
and I
people
was
who
like,
watch my show are going to get that.
yeah.
So now you're in there with her. Those guys are there. Does she go, let's go outside? No.
So then I was like, you're right. Definitely not already. I was like, but I just loved those guys, and I appreciated that they were there. I was so thankful that they were there and they saw her and who they are. And I understand how people get caught in the military, how people get caught into these different processes that they don't want to do, but it gets spun in from the programs and the codes of life. And I was like, that's the truth that I feel. And also that enough of us are ready. And she smiled at me, and she sent this massive wave of love. It was so powerful. It just like felt like it hit me physically. And she says, thank you for honoring your people. And I was just overwhelmed by the feeling that welled up in me. It felt like I just passed a test and I just like made good. Like, I was like, I wasn't going to hate on these guys. I'm going to meet them where they're at. And I was so overwhelmed with love. I bowed down to her and I came back up, and she's gone. So immediately I'm like, where'd she go? And I'm like checking the room. She's not there. The redneck guys look around for a second. They notice she's gone. I go out of this place. And there's nothing anywhere for miles, and there's no woman. she didn't sprint anywhere. She didn't go anywhere. She teleported out. And at that moment, I just had this intuitive feeling. I ran around the art piece and I started running across the desert, and I felt my Merkaba spin up. It spun up higher and higher, and my Kundalini came up through my spine. It got up to super high pitch, and I'm running, and there's lights exploding on the city. And, you should hear my whole story because it's pretty fun. And
So,
then essentially I portal out of my body, and suddenly I'm like flying through this Stargate. And then I'm in this massive astral chamber, fully conscious there, as if I'm fully floating there and I'm not on Earth anymore. And in every direction, there's these lights all around me, and they're all different ambassadors of different species from around the galaxy.
mhm,
And they're all aware of me, aware of them. And we're all in this astral space together.
mhm.
They send me this massive pulse that essentially says, welcome. And then boom, I'm back in my body, but I'm still there, bilocated. So I'm with them. I can feel them. I can see them. I can communicate with them, but I'm also on the ground. And so, yeah, that's the start of an amazing adventure.
Yeah, that I had experience with that bilocation situation a couple times. For me, most of my experience are definitely astral, and then some physical ones. But yeah, that's a very powerful experience. I think that you definitely have been destined for the work you're doing now, and I think you're doing a really great job. So, have you had any other? We got your crawl in stall seeds. You're a crawl in. Everyone's really a crawl in, depending on some come here to learn, some come here to teach, some keep here to support and stuff like that. But and then there's this step down who come down off the craft, and then there's walk-ins, which they don't use too much anymore. But I'm kind of curious, have you had other physical encounters where you've met and gone on board ships in a physical meet me? You're telepathically told, like I know one particular contactee friend of mine, he's told to go somewhere. He goes up in the mountains, they cloak his car, they open the ship, he comes on board and goes out.
Yeah.
The Venusian
Not,
will pick him up
not
at the airport or something.
not like that. But I have had countless close encounters with ships, countless introductions to people, to beings on ships. I began really because one of my mastery areas is in past life recall, memory, and reconnecting. I essentially, after that, began dedicating a lot of my work in my life, my personal life, to finding other beings who remember their planets and where they're from, and starting to essentially use a transpersonal psychology method to hear their stories, take in that as just data, hear their stories, take in that just data, and adding and adding and adding and adding until I've had, hundreds of people share with me information about lifetimes, information about their planets they've been on, the things that they remember, the stuff they never even thought could be true because it was just a dream or a flashback, but then started to form correlations between all that data and approach it as a scientist to help people see and understand that there are very specific qualities to, for example, these different worlds and the kinds of biospheres that they lived on in those worlds, the light frequencies of the star they were born under, the kinds of cultural dynamics they dealt with, and personality qualities they still have because of those cultures that they came from, and try to help people build those bridges. And I would then also call in species from those worlds and talk with them in depth and learn more about their planet, learn more about their species, learn more about their world, learn more about their architecture, for God's sakes. I mean, it doesn't, you name it.
So your
I've been
experience
building that library.
of the people on the earth are initiating your knowledge, and you're connected psychically enough, and your mission is you're bringing in that knowledge and referencing. Very, very cool.
To
I
try to
find
help
that.
clear it up, because I see tons of channelings. I have a whole array of books on that have been either channeled or experiences from people, and what I see is a lot of times powerful experiences, but very little discernment around how they're translating those experiences or what they think is true. And I see a lot of times, as we were talking about earlier, like people filtering. Like someone who was a massage therapist, great, but they try to describe an Arcturian starship and they have no context for that. They don't know how to describe it with physics. They don't know what it means. So they just leap to conclusions like this is what higher dimensions are. They must be ninth dimensional beings, or like one woman I saw at a conference, she's presenting photos of lens flares by taking pictures of street lights. And she's telling everybody that these are ninth dimensional Arcturian ships that essentially are lens flares, and I'm like, okay, you
Yeah.
are really having a connection experience, but just by doing what you're doing right now, you are actually making all of these people look crazy. You're making the reality and the beauty and the power and the majesty of our connection to our own star family, where we came from and why we're here on this planet right now. And you're creating such a powerful disinformation structure that now other people cannot trust that knowledge or information.
I
And
think
I want to restore that trust.
I feel the same way. Some of my early days, my experiences, they took me way out of the solar system. They were never in front of me, but they would show me, like I was shown holographic images of Atlantis in different times, sometimes lifetimes. And I was able to, whatever I focused in on would take me into whatever in-depth area of discovery. Some of it was in the Mayan lands and stuff like that. I had some stuff in Egypt. And when I was in Egypt, one of the times I really had a visceral thing was I was in the bus and I was all of a sudden kind of daydreaming, and I was kind of like back in Egypt, and I looked out the window and it's kind of like it's lush and green. I'm like going, what is that? Where are we? I don't remember that on the way in. And then my mind came in. I go, what? And boom, it was desert again. So these type of bleed throughs are a really positive, powerful experience for people. And when you realize, this is what Alon said, I said, why can't can't you take us all up together? I'm seeing this contactee doing this and that, and I won't name names. It's pretty apparent in certain circles, even very high level real contactees versus others. I mean, no, everyone has a same intent, but that's not real. Calling out the other person. And I was just like, I was with Cobra and Corey, where they were big names. And I said, look, can you guys come together and just support, and not because I get people, Corey's this, and they're attacking because I was friends with both of them. I'd get attacked. So what I feel is the agenda of the system that they come from. There's each federation, confederation, multiple local systems. Then you have the agenda of the planet. Then you have the agenda of the individual on board the ship. And then you have the apperception of the human and their limited understandings that create such a diversity. And they did say at some point in the future, there's going to be group liftoffs to bring people together. There's still a lot of, as they said, egos swaggering around right now. But I think that each person who's putting out the truth, they're gathering a following, and sometimes their following wants to push back when they don't, but sometimes they do also against the other person. So I just want to say, in the spirit of peace and harmony, don't deny others' experiences. And even those people who have that experience, I'm happy that whoever it was, that woman who doesn't have that much experience, was brave enough to come out, who has enough knowledge, kind of like you acknowledging the humanity. I acknowledge that. But at the same time, I just roll my eyes. And that's why a lot of times when people come up to me, I grill them under the headlamps a little bit, and let them reflect a little bit to see, not everyone's meant to talk or share about it, but let it inspire you in ways like you have. May I ask, do you do past regression with people?
Yeah, I have for decades at this point.
Okay, well, I want you to put me down after we do this call. I want you to connect with me because I definitely been wanting to do that. The Venusians have told me some things about my previous lifetimes, but my mind gets in the way a little bit when I'm out of my body.
I'm really into getting, helping people get their mind out of the way so they can have a direct memory and experience, not tell them what their experience is. Like that's one of my pet peeves too. And I'll just say, like I will never doubt or challenge someone's experience. However, it is important to take a little bit of, everything with salt, everything with discernment,
Yep.
and recognize that how they may be translating or perceiving what they're experiencing may be based on a program or a construct or something they were taught, or some issue they have. And in some cases, I do worry a bit in the way that some information is being put out within our community, because I see a lot of trauma that's not processed. And I understand very clearly from my own journey of, having some pretty intense experiences in my own life, that trauma is something that you have to face and you got to go into. And as long as you're blocking out parts of yourself or blocking out those traumatic experiences, it will distort the way that you're attempting to bring your gift to the world. And that means that, unfortunately, some people are psychotic and some people are narcissistic and some people are absolutely telling false stories because of the attention that it gets them. And
Maybe something like that.
you have to keep at least, a hand on that pulse and
Yeah.
compassionately understand. And that's important for people to hear and to know too, is that just because somebody is a channel, or they say they're ex-government, or they got this information from whistleblowers, doesn't mean it's true.
Exactly.
And by the way, whistleblowers have been used by some of these government institutions to distribute false information for decades. I mean, that's one of the biggest disclosure things that came from Greer's work and Stephen Bassett and, Rubin and all these guys. Like, we know that that's true. So we have to, I think that it's important for each person to really tune into where is their truth sensor at, and how can they get more in touch with that and develop discernment through that, so that they can pick through and try to get to the things that really support them as a human being and as a being, discovering who they are and discovering the universe.
That's beautiful. I think I really like the way you talk about this stuff, and I feel the same thing, and because I'm like Capricorn rising, everything's got to be, you better have your ducks in a row and all this stuff. And so I think that's why they've allowed me. I was in an inner circle meeting, and that's where I met Jill, Valiant Thor's wife. And I also was initiated into one of the orders of Melchizedek by the being named Uniah, who's been around since the Exemption, one of Valiant Thor's close friends in the order of Melchizedek. And he put his hand on my head, shock waves through my body. And I feel like one of those experiences is that your physical, how you're going to present this, if you are meant to present it, is important. But I've always been very careful so that I'm actually allowed to hand deliver messages to my friend, and they show up at him somewhere, somehow. He goes to a safe house and he hands the messages. Alon telepathically receives the information from the Queen of Venus, Valiant Thor, Commander Aura Reigns. Or I send messages to Gabriel Green, who's now resident in the Sirius system, Sirius A. He was Abraham Lincoln. He was one of the first contactees. He was around. That guy showed me so much phenomenon and telepathic. And, the spaceship Semyasi came out and met me in the desert and landed when he said, "You better come up, a teacher's coming." So I've had these kind of experiences, but I always want to pick it apart a little too much, maybe. And so my messages are always word for word transcribed.
Yeah.
So there's no room for my error. Certain questions they refuse to answer because they know that I would get feedback or blowback. And I know some of them are right. They're just not going to answer because I would be attacked either way. And they want me to focus more on love, light, healing, and the transformational work that you do more than, I'm kind of like, let's look at the dark side. You got to realize that, everyone, please put it all aside and let's focus with Adam.
Yeah.
And other great, Vivian Chauvet, another wonderful, positive enlightened person. There's a lot of researchers who are giving details, but the transformative work that you're doing, Vivian Chauvet, there's many others, Genesee Roy, some others that are really have these multidimensional experiences and are guiding people more towards this intuitive progress instead of being stuck in this 3D, looking at the matrix and trying to unravel it instead of merging with it and harmonizing, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know this has been a long interview, but I really appreciate your time, Adam. It's been fantastic.
Thanks, Rob.
I'd like, if you could, I definitely would love to schedule another interview and go further with you. I only was able to watch 3 of your videos. Some of the stories you told, I'd heard snippets of them, but I would like to go more in depth. And of course, we'll spend time on the cruise there coming up, folks. Why don't you tell them your website? I mean, you probably have a million of them, but what do you feel you can share? So folks, get your pens and papers ready. I know you can Google search them. You got Gaia.
I'll make it easy.
YouTube. Okay.
AdamApollo.com, and there's pretty much pathways to most of my projects and most of my work through there. So I don't keep it as up to date as I should. I mean, it's been a while since I even posted a writing on there or like an update from a big event. But there's a lot of resources there, and I try to, when I have interviews or have talks, I try to capture all that into the media and videos page. So you can go through there and you can spend a week just watching videos of me if you're really into it. But I also have been a DJ since 1999, and I love bringing together amazing journeys with music. And so I have like 30 something free sets on the website as well. Some of it's beautiful meditative music, some of it's great for sensuality, some of it's great for dancing. So that's kind of fun. And you'll find lots of rabbit holes there to find old poetry of mine and bits of and pieces of my journeys over time. So that's a good place to find out about my work. And my main project right now is not super public because I'm building a 4D social operating system. You might call it 5D, but I have to kind of ride that line of how we communicate things to the masses. And at least, your ability to perceive time is intact in this system, but it's designed essentially to gamify regenerative impact at a planetary scale. So I've essentially taken the Star Command mission structure that I have baked into my memory from lifetimes of doing missions on planets and figured out ways that we can essentially get kids to stop working for TaskRabbit and cleaning up toilets and to start building community gardens and get paid for that, to start cleaning up rivers and getting paid for it, to start doing art projects and getting paid for it, or building new tech models that can serve people and improve quality of life and get paid for it. And so I've created a mechanism to essentially gamify that process to make superheroes out of anybody, and actually validate the impact they're making in the world, showcase that, make it the biggest planetary game that we've ever seen. And I'm well on the way of bringing that to the world. We'll probably have a private alpha out end of summer, and then be launching publicly in 2024. So
this is like a virtual world where kids can create their ideas and patterns and initiate projects.
Yeah, and its interface is basically like a Starship dashboard.
Mm-hmm. This is amazing. And I'm going to say, I don't want to go into the reset, very controversial subject, but money will be made available in the very near future. It's called the Global Restoration Plan. It's the same pattern as NESARA and GESARA. It will allow for everyone to have projects. There are ways that's going to ensure, actually, it's called life assurance, not insurance, for health and many other basic needs, and to make sure everyone has a living wage. For those without bank accounts, the restoration of the planet is absolutely the first: food, shelter, water, and clothing for the hungry and the homeless, and restoring nature and the ending of the supply chains that are created out of a separation from nature and a destruction. And the extraterrestrials view things. If you create something that causes the cells to go lava rotary instead of dextra rotary, it's negative and cancerous, and you don't do that with nature. Everything must support life. So I'm going to say that I'm going to say these Galactic Confederation things. I think Adam would agree. In order for us to become a Galactic Confederation member, we have to end all wars on the planet. We have to have a truly representative and democratic government. We have to have a fair, equitable, and financial system based on prosperity and abundance, not scarcity and lack. And we definitely need to be empathic and compassionate for our fellow man, and to do unto others as we would have done unto ourselves. The Pleiadians measure a culture, Semjase said. She said, Rob, we measure a culture by how the least of the people are taken care of. And when you look at our planet and the homelessness, we have to realize in our hearts, not through legislation, not through a system, but in our hearts, that we're all one and we got to serve. Would you agree?
I absolutely do. I actually, just before our interview, the reason I had to move our recording back a bit is I was on with, I had 50 orgs sign up, and I had about 25 organizational leaders there, including Unify, Humanities Team, Unity Earth, and tons and tons and tons of others, organizations, all focused on essentially how do we do that? How do we uplift the least of us? How do we get people out of, being in a hole to standing on their feet, to creating and to be creatively empowered? One of our partners is Get Help, and Get Help essentially takes what we call sovereign agents, which are people who have lost their home. They have no job. They're in cities everywhere and they don't know what to do. And we've create gamified mechanisms for them within the recovery residences, so they can come into recovery residence and they can give trust or not based on how well that recovery residence is serving them. And essentially there's a relationship building process. And as they build skills and start serving and start doing things, they build vocational resumes. And then we just move them up to the next tier. What's the next mission they can be a part of? What's the next level they can do? And so creating all these routes to take all the people at the bottom and bring them up and turn them into leaders, help them get past their addictions, and help them start really doing amazing work in the world and making money doing it and get their lives back. So beautiful. I'm all about it, 100%.
I'm going to tell you how it's going to happen is local counties will be the ones to distribute the money. There's not going to be any more national or global agendas. Everyone's going to be a free-form county. Your area. The representatives can appeal for, like in Mount Shasta, we're going to appeal for a $50 million hydroponic vertical farming of heirloom quality. It's going to distribute food to every person and a restaurant for free.
Beautiful.
We can do that. We can provide what I thought is we need to get worldwide consortiums, and this is an idea maybe you can float with your groups too, as a leader of these groups, is that we buy out Las Vegas and we take those, each floor is kind of like a dorm room there can be homeless thing where people are getting health and healing checks all the way down into integration into different levels of rehabilitation. We can put a lot of people to work by having a trash cleanup and gathering all plastic and removing things. But one of the things I thought would be good is to have like a guild, a technocracy in a sense of experts in electric and energy. And when these systems come out from the deep state and those scientists that have been working and have these systems, we can develop the free water systems and the water purification systems and let the different cultures bring their best water experts together. And then we can fund them in different areas, because different areas of the planet might not have the highest ability to transform and to create water. But we got to stop with these water companies and the plastic at destroying the ecosystem. So all this is going to be, if we can share this in worldwide forums, once everyone gets over the trauma and realize we're working together, then the
Yeah.
best electrical, the best engineer, the best educators, the technologies, all these things can come forward. So I
Well, there's a
applaud you.
group tomorrow actually meeting. My friend runs an organization called the Independent National Union. And what he's doing is he's uniting all the independent parties in the United States. And he has several of them already joined up and fully signed on. And all the groups that were independent parties that believe the red versus blue nonsense in America is one of the biggest blockers to us actually innovating, is uniting the people. And it turns out over 70% of Americans already identify as independent, and creating a massive unified movement of people focused on the ethics and on the change making and on the projects. And part of the instantiation of that work is creating local civic unions, which will act like town halls, but instead of being kind of caught already in the bureaucracy of the town hall, it's actually people coming together for the purpose of connecting and for the purpose of leadership themselves. And out of those civic unions, we deploy operations, missions, and all these things. And then the people that build the most trust and the most leadership in that process through decentralized validation of trust and leadership and badges from their missions and all the cool gamified stuff that we're creating in our platform, they essentially become the candidates. And those are the people that then get elected. And we do exactly what you're saying, Rob. We create a local rule at a county level. And now counties that actually can make changes can do it all over the place.
The
And
money will be there.
To mayors, we roll that up to governors, we roll that up to Senate and to the nation. But the real power exists at the community level, at the county level, and at the linkage that actually brings us together in everyday life.
That is amazing. That's beautiful. I see this. This is for me, this is a very important interview. I mean, we've gone off in some areas, but you've really ignited some fires of innovation that I see are very positive for the planet. These groups that you create, they can have projects. So all you have to do to submit a project, if you're supplying jobs, you don't have to pay back the loan.
Nope.
The infinite abundance that used to go for $1 billion toilet seat to control and reach out to the dark side and destroy the world, those are gone now. All the money can be used, and the government can continue to supply. It's an endless supply of thing, because what is the value? The value that backs it is each individual, and we're infinite creative potential individuals. And if we're doing good together, the harmony reaches up. And like on Venus, we'll have a 7-star life with so much abundance and prosperity. We don't need gold. We can replicate it.
Exactly.
We'll live in harmony with nature. It's a beautiful plan.
And as a transition factor, like, you don't need government to pay for anything, because the reality is, like, in our system, we recognized and we did all the metrics. It turns out, like, the digital creative products market, in other words, people selling each other courses, images, videos, whatever kind of content you want, music, etc., that's $1 trillion a year market. Okay. So you then get people that are in that and doing that already to just donate 1% minimum into an impact fund sector of your choice. And now all of a sudden you gamify that, so they're earning points and they're growing in their impact because they took 50% of that album that they released and they put it towards cleaning up rivers. Well, guess what? That money's now in an impact fund wallet. And now you can have somebody be like, we need to clean up Boulder Creek. So they create a plan. They're like, let's clean up Boulder Creek. But hey, everybody's busy and everybody's working. But I bet if I paid everybody $100 for the day, they would do it. All I need is like 10 people. So can I have $1,000 for my mission? They request a bounty and the fund is like, yeah, it looks like a good mission. Bounty attached, boom. Now you've got kids who would otherwise be working at the gym or working for Uber or working at TaskRabbit. They're cleaning up the river and they're making way better money than they would otherwise. And that's how we do it. Gamify where people are already at.
I see the gamify as a project submission and a learning process. I'm hoping the money will come to you. You will just supply to the global, it's called the World Trust. Yeah. It's all the world's money is under a transparent glass. And everyone we have certain initiatory systems that are already in process from the
Yeah.
Galactic Interface right now. They're
Sure.
actually working on the technology and the coding for this new system to come into play when it comes. It's not going
Hi,
to,
that's me.
yeah, there you go. So yeah, if you're doing that, so all this is going to be coming up. So you want to get involved and start creating new ideas and new projects,
Yeah.
work with Adam. AdamApollo.com, folks. I'm looking forward to spending more time with this fine, young, healthy, intelligent, interdimensional brother. And I want you to follow him. And we'll see you at my conference. We'll see you maybe on the cruise. I'll see you in LA. I'm doing some stuff down there. So keep
Sounds
an eye
good.
on both of our updates. And thank you, Adam. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much, Victor the Light. God bless. Take care.